Hospitality Meets is brought to you by RotaCloud, the simple workforce management software for hospitality teams. RotaCloud lets you create and share rotas, record attendance, and manage your team's annual leave, all in less time than it takes to make a brew. It can also make life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request holiday, and even pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be. Welcome to Hospitality Meets with me, Phil Street, where each week we take a light-hearted look into the stories and individuals that make up the wonderful world of hospitality. Today's guest is Jane Pendlebury, CEO of HOSPA, the Hospitality Professionals Association. Coming up on today's show, Jane mixes with celebs.
And I used to sit next to Jon Snow when he was presenting Channel 4 News.
Phil questions why Jane is on the show. Why did you say yes?
You Phil, what are you doing?
And we wonder what happened to Jane for this reaction.
I think literally our knees gave way and we were on the floor laughing because we'd held it in for so long.
All that and so much more as we chat through Jane's superb journey so far. Jane made the time for our chat in the run-up to one of the busiest times of her year, so a massive thank you to her for that. So please don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share everywhere you can. Enjoy! And a huge Hospitality Meets welcome to Jane Pendlebury. How are you?
Hi, good morning, Phil. Nice to meet you. How are you?
Yes, great. All good, all good. Where do we find you today?
I am in the HOSPA office, which is based just west of Guildford in a little town called Hazelmere.
Very nice. Nice part of the world.
It is indeed. I can, from my window here, I can see more green than anything else, so
that's
that's nothing
great
to complain about.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, well, you've kind of already alluded to what it is that you do, but just tell the world what it is that you do.
So HOSPA is the Hospitality Professionals Association. We are a membership organisation, all with senior hoteliers and hospitality managers, people typically involved in finance, revenue management, technology. We also run the Hotel Marketing Association, so we have marketing and some salespeople involved there. But we're a membership organisation all about sharing best practice and networking and just introducing the right people to the right people and just facilitating those conversations.
That's a great tagline. Introducing the right people to the right people. I
Oh,
like
well,
that.
it's not an official one. Maybe I'll start that as an
Yeah.
official one.
Yeah, I could put that in 2025's marketing campaign. That's and I'll take 10% of any uplift in revenue. Yeah.
Naturally.
That's the way it works. Yeah. No, great. Well, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of people out there who will know what HOSPA is. I'm sure there's a lot of people who won't as well. That's just the way it goes. But we find you as well in quite a busy time because there's a small matter of a little event that you're putting on coming up very shortly.
That's right. We do lots of smaller events over the course of the year, but our big one is Hospace, which is HOSPA's conference and exhibition, which is actually a week today on the 14th of November. And I think over the course of the day and the gala awards dinner in the evening, we will see about 700 delegates, which
Wow.
is a lot of people. The vast majority of those being UK-based finance, technology, commercial leaders in hospitality businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's an epic lineup you've got this year coming up as well. Some very familiar names from throughout the industry. Yeah, I'd imagine. I'm actually quite surprised you were able to make time to have a chat to me today, to be honest.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to talk to you. It's a nice bit of escapism, actually.
Very good, very good. There we are. See, now you're affecting my marketing now. It's a nice bit of escapism. There we are. Superb. Well, anyway, I mean, we'll get into all of that in the fullness of the conversation, I'm sure. But actually, what I really want to do is take you all the way back, and because you obviously didn't just arrive here, there's a bit of a journey to get there. So, and I think we obviously spoke off microphone about this before as well. Is that your route into hospitality, I suppose, is not a linear one, not a kind of normal one, he says in inverted commas. So yeah, take us all the way back. How did you start your career? Let's start there and see where it goes.
Well, right at the very beginning, I worked at our local hotel, which was the Castle Hotel in Taunton in Somerset, as a waitress. I think that was one of my very first jobs. And then I did a degree in hospitality from Bournemouth. So I did sort of go into hospitality from that point of view. And I worked at various hotels around the place, but ended up working for a conference booking agency who then transferred me to their London office where I was covering some maternity leave. And I didn't leave London. I stayed in London then for another 20 odd years and got more into the technology side of the hospitality business, following on from the conference organising. And I was selling property management systems, point of sale systems, and latterly revenue management systems into again hospitality businesses, UK and further afield as well.
Right. Okay. So what was taking you back to the conference organising? And actually, let's before we do that, what were the types of jobs that you were doing within hospitality at the beginning of your career?
Within the hotels, well, I did a management training course with De Vere Hotels and worked mainly at the Royal Bath Hotel in Bournemouth. So I went right across the departments. So from housekeeping to kitchen to switchboard operator. I was involved in some payroll processing, did absolutely everything. And that
Wow.
was so useful. Still to this day, I can think back and remember that feeling of cleaning a room, or the nightmare of going into a bedroom that was absolutely chaotic after the people had left. And when I leave a hotel room now, I keep it really as clear as I can because I just remember
Yeah.
the horror.
You'd think that the vast majority would do that. You'd think the vast
You
majority
would,
would do that, but
you
yes,
would,
the
but
reality is something a bit different.
possibly something different. And I've heard horror stories since about other people when they've in bedrooms, people lighting fires in their bedrooms and things like that, all sorts of weird and
Blimey.
wonderful things. I didn't have to experience anything like that. And then I went to the back actually to the Castle Hotel in Taunton as their front office manager and worked there. And it was actually whilst I was working there that the owner of the conference management company, conference organising company, used to come in for lunch really regularly. So I got to know him, and that was how I ended up working for him.
Ah, right, right, right. So we're kind of in the realms of kind of not what you know, it's who you know here in terms of somebody's seen something in you and thought, oh, you might be good at this, and you've kind of looked at it and go, oh, that sounds interesting, and probably something that you maybe weren't that familiar was a thing.
No, absolutely. This chap used to come in for lunch regularly, and it was a beautiful restaurant. We had some high profile chefs go through Gary Rhodes, Phil Vickery. He used to come in for lunch on his own. I think it was once a week. It might have been once a fortnight, but he just used to come in. Obviously, it was his thinking time, and he would have himself the most gorgeous meal. And I was a bit mystified by him really because most people
Right.
came in as a group or as a couple or whatever. And he used to come in by himself, come and he was absolutely charming, come and pay the bill. And yeah, I guess over the months, I got to know him, so I ended up working for him.
Mm. And what was it? I mean, I suppose taking you back again, what was it about hospitality that hooked you in to kind of pursue that as your avenue for a career?
I think that's such an interesting question because everybody has got, I think, relatively similar stories when you ask them that question. First of all, once you're in hospitality, I think you get that connection, you get that buzz, and you don't want to leave it. I think I possibly thought that it was a bit more glamorous than it might be.
Right.
When you go into a hotel, you see people having a great time and going up to their rooms, and receptionists looking charming and good food. So I think all of that appealed to me. And then once you're actually working in it, you realise that maybe back of house it's not as glamorous, but that team, the camaraderie, everything that you get is second to none. I did leave the industry for a little while, probably about 20 odd years ago, because again I was offered something, and it was about data centers, and the salary they were offering was more or less double what I had been earning in hospitality. And I couldn't bear it. I stayed 9 weeks, took the salary, and then left, came back to hospitality,
Right.
because I just don't think you can get that same feeling of belonging that you get. I guess there are other industries like it, but I think hospitality does it very well.
I could not agree with you more, and you're bang on message for the podcast, by the way. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I've experienced exactly the same thing. I left the industry for I think it was about 9 months, and I was recruiting for accountancy across multi-sector. And the thing that in principle that should have been easier to do because it was a lot more black and white. It was a lot more tick boxy. They've got to have this length of experience as a financial controller. They've got to have this qualification, and you find them and you make a placement. And so, great. But actually, the thing that I missed the most was the human element to this. There's a lot of sectors out there that are, I don't want to say humanless, but I think hospitality businesses in any way in which any role that you're doing in the industry it's still very human centric, and I really missed that.
Yes, absolutely. I think there's nothing like it for the conversations. If you're going to be in hospitality and want to be in hospitality, the chances are that you like people,
Yeah.
and you're therefore good to have a conversation with, and interesting and smiling and interested in what they're doing. So yeah, I think we're all very lucky to work in hospitality.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And actually, you've now got one of the best reasons that somebody came into hospitality for the glamour. I mean, yeah, let's get that on a t-shirt as well. It's yeah, this is all good stuff. Okay, so you're now at the conference organizing booking agency. Just tell us a little bit about what that means, because I don't think we've had anybody on who's kind of done that role before. So interested to kind of just learn a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, actually, it was a hotel booking agency. So
Right.
obviously it was pre-internet, really. Gosh, that's aging me, isn't it? So the vast majority of the people that worked there were booking hotel rooms, bedrooms, on behalf of corporate clients, and then getting sort of discounted rates. And then get commission back from the hotels as well. So that worked well. But my particular role was to organise conferences for them. And what I still find phenomenal to this day is that most of those conferences were in London, or certainly within the M25. And in that role, you learn very quickly the hotels which will take the amount of people that you needed. And suddenly I was empowered with so much knowledge that if somebody came to me for a conference for 50 people, 75 people, 750 people, and they told me roughly what they wanted to spend, or whereabouts in the southeast, as it was typically, they wanted to go, I would know immediately the top 3, 5 hotels or conference centres that would accommodate them best. And that knowledge it was so quick to learn. And yeah, sadly I can't remember all of it now.
Yeah.
But I remember I sometimes go into hotels now in well, it doesn't have to be in London, it can be anywhere. And I think, gosh, yes, I remember placing business here, because I didn't always go. I didn't always attend the conferences. We were a booking agency. We weren't sort of the full-on conference organizer. We booked the space and did that sort of first bit, and then we didn't get into the nitty-gritty of the audiovisual and all those bits that we now do for our own conference.
Yeah. And how long did you do that for?
Oh, that's taken me about a couple of years,
A couple of
probably.
years. A couple of years
Couple of
will
years.
cover it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. And what happened next? How did you progress from there?
So I actually took a bit of time out. They were closing the London office, and I didn't want to go back to Somerset. And so I took a bit of time out and did lots of temping jobs, which was fascinating. I worked for Channel 4 News for a while, which was
Wow.
so interesting.
Mm.
I had a very junior job. Really, my job was to pick things up from the fax machine and deliver it to the right person's desk. But we had the news feed coming in on our each. We all had our own computers on our desk, which was a thing at the time. And I remember seeing all this news come in, and Britain joined the ERM at the time, and there was lots of different things going on, and it was really interesting. And I used to sit next to Jon Snow when he was presenting
My
Channel 4
God.
News, so I had the opportunity to go and just watch it being filmed. And that was only a temping job, and I have no idea how long I did it for, probably a couple of months. But then the Gulf War happened, and I remember I'd left and gone on to a different temping job by then, but they got back in touch with me because they were so short of people to cover the Gulf War, because the news was running sort of not quite 24 hours, I don't think, but it was a lot more. And they were saying, could I come back? Because they thought I had the voice for presenting news.
Yeah, I
But I
say.
didn't take that opportunity. I think I'd have still ended up carrying fax machines around the office. I think that's really what they, not fax machines, faxes around the
Yeah,
office.
yeah. No, you do have a voice for presenting, for sure. And I'm assuming you must have to do a little bit of that as part of the job that you have now.
Yes, I do. I speak on panels relatively frequently. I was actually at one last night at World Travel Market. We were discussing guest reviews last night, and yes, at our own conference, I'm obviously welcoming and doing the summary of the day and bits and pieces through the day. So yes, it is, I guess, quite normal for me to be in front of people, speaking, presenting.
Yeah. Do you like that, or is that something you've had to learn to like, or how are you around getting up in front of people and doing stuff like that?
I think I'm not sure. I think there's very few people that actually really love it. I don't mind it, and I think the more you do, the easier it becomes. And a big turning point for me was during the pandemic. We had our conference booked, and it was at the Royal Lancaster, but of course it was 2020, so we couldn't have a massive conference in 2020.
Hmm.
But we had the fortunate instance where the Royal Lancaster had created a TV studio effectively. So we did run the conference in 2020. All we had in the room was the speakers, because the restrictions that we had from the government at the time allowed us to have, I think, up to 30 people in the room. So we ran the full conference, but with no delegates. The delegates were all online watching live. So I felt a bit like, I was presenting this morning. That's what it felt like.
Yeah.
And then I was introducing all the various different speakers. Some were coming in online, so over Zoom or whatever we were using, and lots of others were there in the room. And that was a real education for me, because there was nobody watching. So it was very weird presenting to a cameraman and nobody else really, or a couple of other people in the room. But that gave me confidence. I think it changed my ability to go out on stage with more confidence, because I looked back and I could see it, and I thought, goodness, I did that. And I think it was because I didn't have that overwhelming walking on stage and seeing, hundreds of faces, that it was just like I was having a chat with some people. And I think that's good advice for anybody. Just forget that there's hundreds of people there. Just think about a couple of anonymous people. I don't like thinking about people I know particularly in the audience. I prefer to just almost have it anonymous, and not think, well, what will John be thinking, or what will Mary be thinking? Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's very easy in that environment when you're on show, basically, I suppose, is to go right into your own head about stuff, isn't it? And guarding against that, I think, is the thing that comes with experience. But even to this day, when somebody asks me to do a live piece, I'm always like, yeah, let's do it. And then I get to the day and I'm like, why did you say yes? You fool! What are you doing? But yeah, I agree with you. I'm not sure. I think there's a very select few people who just really probably get a big buzz and a kick out of it. The rest of us tolerate it.
But it is so much more engaging, isn't it? Watching something live is so
Yeah,
much more engaging than
totally.
something pre-recorded. It's and I love, whenever we're doing anything live, which is the majority of stuff we do, I love the audience interaction. If we can get questions from the audience or some kind of involvement, then I will always encourage that. I think that works well, because then people really feel part of it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Back to your story. What happened next?
So I was temping and having a great time. Actually, I was thoroughly enjoying it and earning quite well. Actually, it's amazing that you can earn, some decent money if you're working hard, doing long hours. But I ended up answering an advert for a position as a trainer in a software company that was selling into hospitality. So I joined this company as potentially a trainer to install property management systems, so front office reservation systems, that sort of thing. And pretty soon after I started, we did an exhibition. We were on the exhibition stand, and I was chatting away. And I remember the owner of the company, or the UK part of the company, came up to me and they said, "Right, we don't want you as a trainer." And I'm thinking, "Oh, what have I done wrong?" And they moved me straight into sales. So I never really did the installations. I certainly got involved in some installations, but was never the one that was teaching, the teams and teams of people which buttons to press and that sort of thing.
Mm,
And I sold systems for many years, and saw the progression an Ethernet network across, PCs and various different things, and then obviously the onset of the internet and the cloud and how that changed things. But my career saw property management systems. Then we moved on. We introduced the first touchscreen point of sale into the UK,
Right.
and then latterly revenue management systems, which was just such an opportunity to sell something. Then this was sort of 2000, really. I think I joined the company in 1999 to sell revenue management systems, which was the new stuff. It was all very exciting. It was the AI of its time. It was sort of magic forecasting, and I really thoroughly enjoyed doing that.
Magic
Big learning
forecasting.
curve.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, 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 yeah. And well, I suppose as well, certainly from the outside looking in and hearing you talk about that there, it strikes me that I suppose rather than being strategic around this is the direction of travel that I'm going to do, it's almost like it kind of landed on your lap a little bit, and so you've been. It looks like you've been open to opportunity. I think is the point that I'm trying to make, as opposed to this is where I'm going, this is what I'm going to do. It's like, oh, an opportunity has come along. Oh, that sounds really interesting. I'm gonna give that a go.
Yes, it's a privilege to be able to do that, isn't it? I was almost blown around by the wind a bit, and
Yeah,
let's see what happened. I mean, I did have responsibilities. I got myself a mortgage really quite young in life, but I
they're
guess,
great, aren't they? We
yeah.
love
Oh,
mortgages.
what
Yeah,
fun! What but it does focus your mind in that you have to earn. I mean, I guess it's the same whether you're renting or whatever. But I didn't want to lose that independence of having my own home. So that just focused my mind, and I didn't necessarily chase the money, but I was always going to make sure I had a decent job and was working. And as I said right at the very beginning, mostly in hospitality, and I was enjoying myself. I was having the time of my life, really. And some of those connections that I made, back in the 90s, gosh, that's a long time ago now. I still see them today, bump into them at World Travel Market, or they'll be coming to our conference next week. People that I've known for such a long time.
yeah,
And yeah, I think hospitality is like that. It allows you to take opportunities left, right, and centre. Other people I know did some fantastic traveling as well with their job, because you can do in hospitality.
yeah. No doubt. I think the point you make about lifelong connections is such an important one. And I was on a client meeting yesterday, and we were talking about exactly the same thing. Is that they'd been doing what they've been doing for 20 years. We'd been doing what we've been doing for 20 years. And in the end, you always keep coming back to the same people because you've built trust, you like them, all of the things that's the reasons why you would want to do business with somebody. And I think we're, as an industry, that this is such a wonderful part of the industry, is that it's just that connection. I just,
Mm.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure other sectors get it, but I'm very, very blinkered when it comes to. I just think because we're all human-centric individuals generally that work in this industry, I just think that connection is extra special.
Yes, yes, and we all want to get along, don't we? We want to be um, friends, if that's the right term to use. But we all want the same thing, don't we? And are determined to enjoy it. I knew there's that phrase, well used phrase. I don't go to work to make friends. And I don't think anyone does go to work specifically to make friends. But I've ended up with many, many really good friends through my various jobs.
Yeah, and if I've had this conversation with my wife, in fact, around the fact that she and the industries that she's worked in, yes, there are the odd one here and there, but within hospitality, there, I worked with people 25 years ago that I haven't seen in that time. But as soon as you reconnect, it's just like there has
Yeah.
been no time between that.
Mm.
And yeah, lifelong friends.
Yeah, we're very privileged, aren't we? Very lucky to found our place, I guess, in
Yeah,
in the working world.
absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, let's round off your story. So you were selling technological products into hospitality businesses, and yeah, how did that develop?
So I ended up as, I think my final title was very highfalutin, general manager and VP for Europe, I think, of an American software house, which was fine. I had some children, carried on working really throughout. I did a little stint. I bumped into, funnily enough, through connections. I bumped into somebody on a train who just before, it was about 2004, and we were chatting away. He worked for Visit London, so the London Tourist Board, effectively. And just chatting to him on a train, he was somebody I'd known for a very long time. I ended up working for them as we bid for the 2012 Olympics.
Oh, wow.
So you may
Timing.
remember, yes, we won that bid in 2005. I remember it vividly because I was very heavily pregnant when we won the bid, and my whole team, we had people in Singapore, we had people in Trafalgar Square, and because I was so heavily pregnant, I was sat in the office conference room watching it on the television, but all my colleagues were out, sort of, really enjoying the moment and celebrating. I mean, I enjoyed the moment, but that was a great opportunity as well to work on that.
5-star hospitality means having the right people in the right place at the right time, and that's exactly where RotaCloud can help. RotaCloud is the online platform that makes planning rotas, recording attendance, and managing annual leave easy. Its simple, drag-and-drop interface lets you create and share rotas with your team in minutes, while our built-in budgeting tools mean you'll know exactly how much you're spending on staffing before sending the rota out. RotaCloud also makes life easier for your staff, allowing them to check their rotas, request time off, and pick up extra shifts, all through the RotaCloud mobile app. Start your 30-day free trial today by visiting rotacloud.com/Phil and find out how much easier managing your team can be.
But my career changed a little bit with children, in that, when I was working for the software house, I was traveling a lot, and my bosses were in the States, and things like that are quite hard when you've got young children at
Yeah.
home. So that's when I started to sort of, I guess, a little bit change my career. I'd always been involved with what's now HOSPA. At that time was called BAHA. It was the British Association of Hotel Accountants. I'd been involved with them as a member and as a sponsor, and I started doing some volunteer work with them. So I think it all came about because I wanted to go to their annual conference. I wasn't earning at the time; I must have been on maternity leave, so I volunteered to help. And so I was helping at the conference. I was literally somebody that would be there, maybe, sorting out the exhibitors in the morning, helping welcome in the hoteliers and the hospitality people to as delegates. And bit by bit, that grew and grew and grew. And I was involved in things like the name change from Baha to Hosper. I was on a little sort of subcommittee that helped with that. And bit by bit, I ended up getting onto payroll. That was in 2014. And I was running the membership and events office for HOSPA. I did that for a couple of years, and then the existing CEO moved on, and the board very kindly awarded me the role of CEO. So that I've been doing that since early 2016. So it's a little while now, but that's where I am now.
Right. Yeah. And this one actually strikes me as being maybe not more strategic, but certainly a little bit more focused forward, in the sense that you were already, helping out, in inverted commas again, getting heavily involved in the organization, then, moving into the organization, and then moving forward with the organization. So there's almost a more linear line here than perhaps with the rest of your career.
Possibly there is, and yeah, I do feel I've sort of fallen onto my feet here. I love what I do. I love the fact that we are helping, supporting those the operators out there, the finance people, the technology people, introducing them, as I said at the beginning, to the right people, but also sharing best practice. And sometimes I will just pick up the phone, and it'll be somebody with the most random question, but they didn't know who else they could ask. Sometimes, if I'm very lucky, I might know the answer, but the chances are I will know somebody who knows the answer. Or, and this is often very relevant as well, know somebody who is experienced or has experienced something very similar, so that I can then connect the two together. So sometimes that will be with a professional advisor. It might be an accountant or something I connect them to, or somebody from a bank, or it's just a fellow hospitality person who has possibly confided in me and said, "Oh, this is awful. This is what's happening," and then I'm able to connect them to somebody else who I'm, in the privileged position of knowing that, the person A has had the same problem as person D. Let's get them talking to each other and working, so they can work it out between them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a
But
privilege.
yeah, and well, back to that connection piece again, and actually, this also kind of plays a little bit into your time when you were learning, like what all the hotels do and what their conference sizes are. It's the same principle, really, except really what you're talking about here is people
Yes,
instead of properties, as it
yes.
were, and being able to connect the dots and who should go where and all of that. Really, really interesting.
Yes, and it's brilliant to be able to help people as well. The pandemic really set that in stone. We, as hospital, we carried on working quite diligently during the pandemic, but I was the only person coming into the office. Everybody else was working from home, and that enabled me to answer every single phone call, which I wouldn't necessarily normally do. But that meant the phone didn't ring that much, but every time it rang, it was somebody probably in some kind of panic's probably not the right word, but some situation that they weren't happy and they just needed some support. But because I was taking every single phone call, I began to know a lot of the answers. And I remember there was some that I remember one chap in particular, his bank were not going to fund him through. And I thought, "Ugh, I don't think I'm going to be able to, override a bank's decision." But just by luck, the bank that he banked with, I happened to know somebody at that bank, and although he wasn't their account manager, he was able then to smooth the path, and they got the support they needed. I mean, that was a stroke of luck, but it was it was an honor to be able to help people like that. And also, just by answering all those phone calls, I had a lot of knowledge on things that I'd never known anything about, how to close a hotel.
Yeah, well,
Unless you worked in a resort type place that maybe did shut down for the winter or for certain periods, very, very few people had actually closed a hotel completely. And I often tell the story. I got a phone call from somebody I know very well in a big London hotel, and he said, "We've got to close the hotel. We've got to do it, by tomorrow. How do I do it?" And I said, don't know, but let's talk it through. And he had this massive list of things that he was going to do in the next 24 hours. And I don't know whether I contributed to that or not, looking back. But what that enabled me to do was have that list in my head of things that you needed to remember to do, that then just became a working document that we were all sharing, because that's the other thing about hospitality. People are always very happy to share, although hotels might be competitive with each other, or restaurants, whatever it might be, they don't tend to stitch each other up.
no,
Yeah, there's a big collaboration.
totally. Yeah, the word that I've heard banded around on this show has been co-opetition. There we are.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, yes, you're right. They're all competing for potentially the same contracts, the same guests, but in the end, if there is a pinch point or an issue, then everybody is so willing to help
Mm, mm.
as well at the same time, and that's very, very special.
Yes. Yes. No, it really is. It really is. And yes, I think the more collaboration you can have, the better. The better. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I suppose with that period as well. I mean, it was obviously not a particularly great period that I think anyone would be willing to repeat anytime soon. But for you, it sounds like as well, it's almost like a gift in some ways, because it allowed you to again learn some more things that perhaps were in the throes of your day to day busyness that you just don't get the opportunity to learn.
No, I learnt how to say it, because it was, you couldn't say you enjoyed the pandemic, 'cause that was a very strange thing to say, and some
Indeed.
people had a terrible time. But the words I use is, it was a very rewarding time for me personally, for Hosper, and for the team. I think we all felt that we were properly able to do what we are here to do, but it just felt very much more rewarding when we knew we were genuinely helping people who were just bewildered and a little bit lost. We could put them as far as we could, on the track to get into a better place.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about HOSPA. So, just remind us all what it stands for.
HOSPA is the Hospitality Professionals Association.
Very good. And so, I mean, I think I know the answer to this question in my own head, but why did you move it from being BAHA to HOSPA?
From being Baha. So when it was the British Association of Hotel Accountants, it was brilliant. It had fantastic focus, and everything was about about finance. And that was an amazing place to be, because everybody knew what they were getting, and the conversations were very, very finance related. And that had massive, massive benefit. But it was probably the technology people in the industry that needed some ability to get together, to talk, to just learn from each other, and to find out if they'd used a particular system and had it worked for them, or how did they overcome this, that, and the other. And in those days, typically a technology person, an IT manager, as we probably called them then, was probably part of the finance team, or certainly reporting in to the finance people. So we had encouragement from our finance members to allow technology people to join the organization, so that they could have their conversation. And also, a lot of the finance people wanted to learn more about technology, because it was all, relatively, well, I suppose by the time we changed to hospital, it wasn't so new anymore. But when a lot of them had started their careers, technology wasn't where it is now, or even 15, 20 years ago. So it was really to let those technology people into the organization, that was part of the reason we changed the branding from Baha to Hosper. But also, at that stage, we had three main tiers. There was finance, there was technology, and then revenue management, so the pricing effectively. And those people also didn't have a natural home. And we saw that they are really effectively the commercial leaders in the hospitality business. So it just made sense to become the Hospitality Professionals Association.
Yeah.
And it was a group for those three streams at the beginning.
Yeah, and also they do a lot of talking to each other, right, on a day-to-day basis in the actual business themselves. So in actual fact, there's coming back to that collaboration piece, there's a lot of synergy between the three elements.
And now there's a role of commercial director or chief commercial officer.
Yeah,
Those job titles didn't exist in hospitality businesses. The beginning of the turn of into the 2000s, you just didn't have those. You went from maybe a head of department to a general manager, and that was it. There were no really commercial roles, or that carried the title of commercial role. And that now is a very big thing. I think it's a great career path for somebody in revenue management. It's a very logical progression to become the chief commercial officer, which is great career progression. So I think the industry has learned as well that it needs to keep the good people. Then there needs to be a path to keep them. And of course, people in revenue management, finance, and technology are probably contributing to the profitability of the hotel with almost everything that they do, which is obviously as they should do.
yeah, without question. Yeah. So, well, let's talk about Hospice. It's a hell of an event for anybody who's never been before. But talk us through what people can and should expect on the day itself.
Yes, we it's a jam-packed agenda. I do get some feedback on that, in that we put so much into the day. In fact, our conference host, a chap called Peter Hancock, who you may have come across,
Certainly
said to
have. I
me,
think everybody has, hasn't they?
he said to me, we had a planning day the other day where I ran him through the program, and he said, "You've done it again." He said, "You've put 2 days worth of content into a single day," and I think we do that, and it wasn't a conscious decision to do that. It was just that we always start at 9. We do get feedback saying, "Oh, can you start a bit later?" But then we'd never achieve everything we want to achieve. So we start at 9 o'clock, and we cover key areas, so that when we're putting the program together at the very beginning, we make sure we're covering something for the technology members, something for the finance members, something for revenue managers, and then we'll carry it forward along those lines. And obviously, we're going with current trends and what's important and whatever, but we absolutely fill the day. And I regularly get feedback from people saying that they might purely be interested in hotel finance, but they come along to the conference and then they'll learn a bit about potentially restaurant finance, or revenue management, or technology, or sales and marketing, something, or the people skills. And they get a lovely overview of everything that's going on in the industry. So we always start the day with a sort of review of the previous year and looking forward to the coming year. We'll look at that. We will have an economist as well. So we do all of that sort of really factual stuff. Exchange of data and information tends to dominate the morning, and then we progress into different maybe panel discussions. We have a leaders panel where we've got some of the sort of the biggest names in the industry chatting about what keeps them awake at night. All of those different things. So we do cover a lot in the day. And then straight into a party in the evening. We go
Indeed.
literally, the conference will break about sort of 6 o'clock, and we go straight into a drinks reception and then our gala awards dinner in the evening. So it's a full on day and evening.
Yeah, but do you know what? That joyous as well, and yes, of course, like business is serious, and there are issues of the day and all of that kind of thing. But the thing that we always have to remember is that I think moments like these are massively important to circuit break people's brains, I think, a little bit as well. But
Yeah.
also from the awards perspective, it's so massively important that we just take a moment to acknowledge good work. Because I think a lot of the time that can pass us by very, very quickly. So I just think it's a marvelous event, and I'm very excited. This is my first time for a few years, so I'm very excited to see
Yeah.
how it's evolved, I suppose, as well.
Yes, well, it grows year on year, and we've had to change the configuration of where we are at the Royal Lancaster this year because the networking space just wasn't big enough last year. So we've had to sort of move things around a bit so that people aren't quite so sort of shoulder to shoulder when they're trying to get their coffee or their lunch.
Yeah. Well, next year you can do 3 days of content in one day. That's
I don't think I can fit any more in.
no, no, indeed. And are you celebrating 55 years of that this year as well?
Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
See, I
So
do my
19
research from
Yeah,
time to time.
very good. Yeah, back in 1969, there was apparently a group of hotel, they probably weren't called finance directors, they're hotel accountants, in a pub, I believe, just having a chat, and they decided to form a sort of more formal organisation where they could meet and share best practice. So yeah, 1969.
Well, there we are. You see, there. I mean, evolution right in front of your eyes, in terms of what a seed of an idea in the pub can
Yeah,
become.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely,
I mean, that's where all the
absolutely.
best ideas are formed, doesn't it? Really.
Of course, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
I can't let you move on without talking about some funny stories from your career. You've obviously had quite an eclectic mix of stuff that you've done actually in your career so far. So give us a funny story from.
funny story. Well, I always struggle when people ask me for funny stories because what was funny at the time never retells terribly well. I remember one particular incident, which it's not even worth trying to tell because I've tried to tell the story so many times. But I just remember being on the reception desk, checking in some very important dignitaries, and thinking, "Am I going to be able to do this?" I was laughing so hard inside, but had to keep this professional face, and I couldn't look at my fellow receptionist because we just had this little sort of joke between us, and it was hilarious. And then when finally we had the place to ourselves, I think literally our knees gave way and we were on the floor laughing because we'd held it in for so long. Funny things. I think I think something funny happens every day, doesn't it? And we all have the stories about guests doing mad things in the middle of the night. But I don't think I've got a great one for you, Phil. I'm sorry.
No, that look the example you just gave there. I think we could probably anybody that's worked front facing with the public has got to have a similar story of
Yeah,
or something that's just so stupid that in the
yeah,
moment where you look back and go, God, what was I thinking? There's
yeah.
that you've sparked a memory actually. When I worked reception on a cruise ship, I was working a late. I mean, there's so many stories I've got from that time, but I was working a late shift on the reception. The late shift would be 10 to 11 basically, and then the reception desk closed and it would get handed over to nights. And it was a graveyard shift. You wouldn't get a lot of inquiries at the time, but you would get clever people coming down to exchange currency for the port the next day because there's no queue. So, you can just do it very, very quickly. And I remember I didn't have my cheat sheet, as we used to have them, of the exchange rates right in front of me, but I saw on the colleague's desk next, which was obviously lying vacant at the time, a cheat sheet which I couldn't quite read. So rather than getting up and getting it, I decided to lean over to have a look and tipped my chair, and you just think to yourself, if ever there was a lesson about laziness, like it was just it's in that moment, just get up and look at it
Yes.
or bring it over. And, it was just, yeah. And there are all manner of stuff that happens to you and for you and all of that kind of stuff when you're just dealing with the public and your own learning experiences.
Yes, yes. Well, we've all got to make mistakes, haven't we, in order to
Indeed.
learn.
Yeah.
But yeah, hilarious. Yes, I do. That has sparked a memory in me actually of doing a night shift, and I booked off the night. I was a night auditor, and I booked the night off for weeks, months in advance because it was my best friend's 21st, and we were going out. And a couple of days before, I was asked if I would work the night, and I said no, I'm sorry, it's been booked off for ages. It's my best friend's 21st. We're having a big party in town. And they said, well, can you come afterwards? And I said, no, I can't. I'm going to be drinking. I
God.
was drinking one as
Yes.
well. And they said, oh, but, we've got no one to do the night audit. And I said, I can't do it. I won't be there. And they said, what will it take for you to come? And I said, well, what it will take is me coming in my party frock and doing
And
the
drunk.
night audit and probably getting most of it wrong because I will have been drinking. And they said, okay, fine, you're on. Can you get there for 2 a.m.?
My
So
God.
I did. I arrived in my party frock, and I remember I sat on the chair in reception with wheels, and it disappeared out behind me. So I obviously sort of plonked myself down.
There we are. Yeah.
But I did the night audit. I mean, how mad is that? I'm sure it's illegal. Shouldn't have been allowed.
Oh God, yeah, I know, but that's the sort of stuff that just happens, right? I mean, and you can't. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling,
Mm,
and this is the thing I think for me about, and one of the reasons why I still love doing this show to this day, 4.5 years on, is exactly for stories like that, because you can absolutely, and every single guest that has been on this show can demonstrate a wonderful career, and have enjoyed most of the moments that come with that career. But at the same time, whilst building this very serious career, you're also going to have a mountain of fun and
yeah.
stupidity and mistakes and learning and just everything that makes life colourful. You're going to experience in this industry.
Yeah, that's so true. And as I've said, I think probably more than once on this podcast, we're very lucky, aren't we, that we found our place here in hospitality, and we are surrounded by the best people in the world.
Yeah, absolutely, and we're all misfits. That's the thing that I've come to learn as well, is that and what better industry is there for a collection of misfits,
Yes, absolutely.
driven misfits.
Driven. Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
there we
Yes.
are.
And open to everybody. Anybody can get a job in hospitality at some level. So
Yeah,
that's what I love about it. And it's a proper meritocracy. You can make your way, you can progress through quite quickly.
yeah, without question, and especially these days. I mean, the investment is still high, the opportunities are incredible. What I remember thinking about this in the run up to 2012 when the Olympics was coming, and the kind of the factory of bedroom creation was just incredible. And I remember thinking, well, what's going to happen after the Olympics? Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen. The demand is going to continue, and the people are going to continue to build
Yeah.
bedrooms, and that's
Yeah.
still happening to this day.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to progress is just incredible.
Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah,
Wonderful industry.
absolutely. Final question before I let you get on your merry way and get prepared for next week is the future. What's in Hospa's and your own future?
Right. So, Hospa, yes, we're in a good position, which is great. So we will be investing in some different things next year, which is we haven't quite finally, so I can't really sort of spill any beans on that because we haven't
Ah,
dotted the i's and crossed the t's. But there's some not major changes because we are where we are because we offer a good stable service to the hospitality industry. But we are in a position to be able to make some changes next year, and I suspect this will be my last job. I can't see myself doing anything else, and it's a fabulous thing to do, and in a way, not quite like working for a charity, but in a way, it is a bit like giving back to the industry, and helping the next generation along, and getting the right people connected at the right time.
that's the one. That's the one. Yeah, no, look, I think it's marvelous. I'm very excited to kind of, I suppose, almost reconnect with it next week at the conference as well. It's always a place where you just remember how many people you know.
Yeah.
Because you just bump into people and everybody comes and shakes your hand, and it's just, and then you sit down and you learn something, and then you get to have it's just a cracking day out. And and obviously I think whenever this goes out, it's probably too late to experience 2024's version. But we are 24, aren't we? Yeah. I had a moment there. But I'd heartily recommend reaching out to you guys to find out how you can get involved and get up for 2025.
Yeah, the conference or any of our smaller events that we do throughout the year as well. So get involved.
Yeah, superb. Jane,
Perfect.
Thank you so much for spending some time, especially ahead in the phase that you must be in right now, which is quite remarkable. So I appreciate that greatly.
I've really enjoyed myself, Phil. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
My absolute pleasure. Take care.
All right, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there we have it. It was awesome to get some time with Jane, and not long after this, I attended Hospice, and let me tell you, it really was true to the ethos of connecting the right people with the right people. We'll be back next week on Christmas Day, no less, and we've got an absolute belter for you, so I'll see you then.